Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today's question asks if I can analyze the mental health and personality factors that may be involved in the plot to kidnap the governor of Michigan. This plot was uncovered by the FBI, and they announced it in October of 2020. Just a reminder, I'm not diagnosing anybody in this video, only speculating about what could be happening in a situation like this. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, subscribe to my channel, and consider supporting me on Patreon. I'll put the link to Patreon in the description for this video. On October 8, 2020, the FBI announced that it had successfully derailed a plan to kidnap the governor, Gretchen Whitmer. Several of the 13 alleged conspirators who were arrested were members of a far-right militia group named Wolverine Watchmen. 6 of the individuals were charged at a federal level, and 7 individuals were charged by the state of Michigan. There are a variety of charges, including conspiracy, terrorism, gang membership, and possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony. The men charged with federal crimes are facing life in prison. The others are facing anywhere from 2 to 20 years. The plan originated as discussions on social media sites, people sharing anti-government feelings regarding the restrictions and shutdowns imposed by the governor. This is how the FBI became aware of the situation. Starting in June of 2020, the men started talking about both peaceful and violent ways to create a self-sufficient society that followed the U.S. Bill of Rights. Men identified government leaders, including Whitmer, that they believed were tyrants. It was at this point that the men reached out to the Wolverine Watchmen group that was based in Michigan. As it turns out, this militia group was under investigation by the FBI for attempting to obtain the addresses of law enforcement officers. The original conspirators, along with some of the people from the militia group, had several meetings in the basement of a vacuum cleaner store that can only be accessed through what was referred to as a trap door, although the owner of the shop said it's really just a door. When I first read this, I couldn't help but picture the vacuum cleaner store from Breaking Bad, also a place where there was some secret activity. In late June of 2020, they came up with the idea of kidnapping Governor Whitmer. They purchased firearms, a high-voltage taser, and night goggles to be used in the commission of the kidnapping, and they held several tactical trainings. After this, several of the conspirators spied on the governor's vacation home. They planned to blow up a bridge in order to distract law enforcement. The men believed that if they conducted this attack, people from other states would be inspired to carry out similar attacks. So this could lead to some type of civil war. It was their intent to kidnap the governor and take her to a secure location in Wisconsin for what they referred to as a trial. One gets the feeling that the jury in this trial would have been a little bit biased. They were captured because the FBI was able to infiltrate their organization with multiple informants. I guess the conspirators forgot to look at the informant checkbox on their application. If they would have looked at it, they would have seen the box was checked. This is why it's important to have good documentation. Also, the members should have made sure that they had the no recording devices sign posted in the basement. Interestingly, one of the members was so concerned about the integrity of the group, he went so far as to collect all the cell phones and take them upstairs. The problem is, of course, that the informants were wearing wires. They were unrelated to cell phones. Now, a wider controversy which comes about because of this case would be the influence of Donald Trump. Like, did he have some influence on these militia members? In the past, he has refused to condemn some groups like this. In addition, this incident really raises the question, are militia groups dangerous? Are they really terrorist organizations? Let's take a look at some of the mental health and personality factors of militia group members that we can see in the research literature. I'm not talking specifically about the members from this case. Members of militia groups tend to fall on the side of believing in conspiracies. Many could be categorized as conspiracy theorists. So they tend to believe in ideas about the invasion of alien lizard humanoids, anti-vaccination, flat Earth, the New World Order, chemtrails. So a lot of beliefs based on the idea that the government is out to get the citizens. Many militia groups have an ideology connected to white supremacy. They have an interest in survivalism. For example, many are doomsday preppers. They tend to have a religious affiliation, mostly based on Christian theology. They also tend to be anti-government, having a high level of distrust for the federal government and sometimes for state governments. Often their anti-government views are based in fear. They believe the government is trying to take away their freedoms and rights. For example, the freedom of religion, the freedom to own firearms, and their right to privacy. They believe these attempts to take away freedoms are malicious, like the government wants to take away those freedoms to ensure that a small number of powerful people will remain in power or add to their power. So this is really done by forming a police state. With this in mind, the members feel as though they are heroes fighting against this evil empire of government conspirators. They also believe that the New World Order is planning an invasion of the United States. So the members believe they need to rise up and defend the U.S. Often when they use the term New World Order, they're really talking about the United Nations. In preparation for all these threats that they believe will come to fruition, militia members tend to stockpile weapons, some of which may be illegal, and they also try to obtain or construct explosives. Now, most militia groups are not involved in criminality. It's the more extreme groups that tend to be a greater threat. One of the real dangers with the more extreme groups is that they believe they're fighting for their freedoms. They're really fighting to preserve their lives. This can make them very determined. People who commit crimes to accumulate money often make a calculation about risk versus reward. So if the penalty is too high, they may not commit the crime. When people are ideologically motivated, the calculation becomes much different. So what about the idea of mental health treatment? Can we reduce this threat with counseling? Cluster A personality pathology is overrepresented in these groups, so paranoid, schizoid, and schizotypal personality features. By their nature, these symptoms are difficult to treat. If somebody's paranoid, then they will be worried about what a counselor is really trying to do. It's hard to effectively treat someone if trust cannot be established. Also, because the militia group members believe they are correct, and again fighting for their lives, what would be the motivation to seek therapy in the first place? I think a lot of what's happening with these groups is they are misinterpreting information. They lack critical thinking skills. We see a confirmation bias. They use the few incidents where the government overzealously enforced laws and violated people's rights, and they forget all the times when the government has been helpful and appropriate. Unfortunately, critical thinking skills can be challenging to teach. What is the typical personality profile for a militia group extremist? Well, we see either very high or very low openness to experience. So on the high side, we may see something like psychosis, an overinvestment in fantasy, someone who really is kind of disconnecting from reality. On the low side, we could see somebody who rejects all abstraction. They tend to be quite inflexible, so they're not willing to look at new evidence and reconsider their opinions. We see low conscientiousness. Even though they might think of themselves as cautious, their behavior actually ends up being quite disorganized. Extroversion would be split. We see both high and low facets, like we would see low friendliness and low gregariousness, but high assertiveness and sensation-seeking. With agreeableness, we see an extremely low level. There's a lot of distrust, although they would tend to think of themselves as straightforward. And with neuroticism, we see a high level overall. They are angry, anxious, and sometimes have difficulty resisting temptation, although they are not necessarily self-conscious. There are a few things specifically about this case in Michigan that I found interesting and wanted to note. I found a few reports that indicated that several of the men in this case were conspiracy theorists. That's really not surprising. I find it interesting that they were not able to maintain a conspiracy of 13 people more than a few months because of people who were willing to expose their wrongdoing. It's ironic that they actually offer proof that it is very difficult and statistically unlikely that a conspiracy can be maintained over a long period of time. If they continue to believe in conspiracy theories, what they're really saying is the government conspirators are smarter than they are, because the government was able to get away with the conspiracy when they were not able to get away with it. The next thing I found interesting, as I mentioned, some of the gang members were part of a militia group named the Wolverine Watchmen. I imagine they selected this name because Michigan is sometimes known as the Wolverine State, and the University of Michigan uses the Wolverine as their mascot. If they wanted to appear less threatening, they should not have selected a mascot that is an aggressive and powerful animal like a wolverine. And the word watchman seems a bit paranoid, like they're hyper-vigilant. I think they should have gone with something like pink fuzzy bunny casual observers. It sends a much more relaxed message, like they could argue to a jury that surely this was all a joke. Who would be afraid of a bunny watching from a distance? Those are my thoughts on this criminal conspiracy. Please put any opinions and thoughts in the comment section. They always generate an interesting dialogue. As always, I hope you found my analysis of this topic to be interesting. Thanks for watching.